TV stands Ilchester Tunnel, a throughway for the B&O Railroad for over a century. But for the past 80 years, it has become something far more sinister.
And the very first one that I pick up says, final solution.
A young lady identifies herself as Sophia Crane.
And then it got a little upsetting after that. Got a little bit weird. There's no cuts. There's no retakes. There's no calling for action. There's absolutely no evidence to suggest that somebody is directing them.
We have the possibility that this whole thing is real. And we have the possibility this whole thing is a largely plausible hoax.
If you're working with all these elements, you can, journalistically speaking, you can construct your own story out of whatever footage you choose to put in there.
I do not believe that this video is authentic.
I think there's some acting involved, and there's some effects involved. And I think that it's kind of disturbing that he feels that the only way to market this footage is to pretend it's real.
This has been done 1,000 times before, and we think it's a scam. I'm not the only one, it's everyone.
We're gonna take this footage to every professional in town that we can find. Ghost hunters, mythbusters. We're going to go to the radio stations. We're going to the TV stations. We're going to show the footage, and we're gonna saturate the market with this information. Then we're gonna prove to the world that Peeping Tom exists. The camera doesn't lie.
Carla and Lou here from Games, Brains and a Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial.com for short, and I'm super stoked. I'm super stoked to be sitting here doing a video review talking about one of my modern favourite horror movies. And when I mean modern, it was released in 2018, so as of time recording, only 3 years ago. Now, I want to preempt this by giving you a little insight into where I am at these days with horror. It's simply this: I pretty much spend every day watching some form of horror movie. I will watch anything. I will happily watch anything. You told me you made a movie that was horror movie that was 70 minutes long, filmed on your phone in your back garden. I'll give it a shot, because the idea is I hope to find something that blows me away. Yeah. And I'm a horrible critic, because I've seen so much. My taste is so random that what I like isn't obviously going to be what someone else likes, and what I've grown to dislike because I've seen too much of. For example, found footage is the best example I can use for this, which is I've seen so many variations on found footage and so many indie found footage horror movies alongside the greats that I feel I'm in a good place where I can sit there and properly judge it, but it's made me hate that style of filming because I've seen so many bad. Whereas if you only watched a handful, you might have a different perspective and balance on it compared to so many, you know?
I feel like with found footage as well, there's like double level of belief.
Oh, yeah.
So you've got an initial of, okay, make me believe why you're filming, and then you've got to believe what's actually being shown. Whereas normal horror films, where it's just standard filming, you're like, right, I'm already in. I'm already here.
Yep.
You've not had to explain to me why it's like this.
You don't have that crutch throughout as well, where you have that problem in found footage where it's, why are you still filming? The classic problem that always exists. If you don't do that style of filming, you don't even have to worry about that aspect. I'm not going to be convinced any less that it's not real, because I want to feel it's real. I want to buy into your movies. It's rare. These days I find it very rare. The point is very rare that I find a movie where I'm like, fuck, I love that. And I'm going to find it hard to think of anything particularly negative to say about it. And here's the thing, I'm not looking for originality, because originality does not exist in horror anymore. Every idea's been done. Yeah. And I have no problem with that. What I just ask you is, you're going to do one of the many ideas that have been done. Give me something, give me a different twist in it. Or just draw me in. This is what this movie did.
Because like this film and other ones that you've really enjoyed have something in common. Yeah. Of mockumentary.
Yes.
That's a great way to structure it.
Yes, that's very important. I think you brought it up now as well, so I'll dive into that. Mockumentaries have become my favoured way of watching found footage style horror movies. There are iffy ones out there. There are, of course, still has a wide array, but modern times, a couple that I've seen, not necessarily on modern films, things like The Tunnel, I think it's 2013. I really like that. I like the mockumentary aspect because that actually really does sell the realness to me when we're almost looking back and we're like, we're making a documentary about this event and this is what occurred and how that plays out. And it is just another style of found footage because we're utilising often the footage that's in it. Yeah. What makes this movie, Butterfly Kisses, different is how it triples up on that. Where I see a movie inside a movie inside a movie. Yeah. And that blew me away. For starters, I was like, well, that's interesting. I'm excited by this. So that's kind of how I sold it to you as well, because you hadn't seen it before when we
No,
sat down
not
to do
at
this.
all. And I do prefer the mockumentary. I do like it because everyone's seen these ones for all different subjects, not even supernatural, just general stuff of a disaster's happened and people look back on what happened, how they broke it down, and yeah, you can make it. Like I said, you can make really creepy elements of it, of like how people react to questions almost. So say if it was like a governor being questioned about what happened in the incident. And there's like, they don't want to talk about it. You're like, why?
Yeah, like
that
something's hidden,
Yeah, it leads to creepiness, and footage can be creepy. Even photos can be creepy.
Savage Land?
Yeah.
Savage Land, yep.
There's like, you can have so much more fun with it rather than just being shackled to, we've found this footage, we have to just show it to you.
Mm-hmm. Or adding that horrible aspect where it's like, oh yeah, this has been dramatized as well, so we've added music and things like that. I'm like, no, you don't have to do that. I'll play along. I will happily play along with your assertion that we're about to watch something real.
Yeah.
So this is written and directed by Eric Christopher Myers, who I really have to say, I think he's done a wonderful job here. He really has. The cast. Now, I'm only going to name 3 of the cast because they're the 3 most important members of it. We have Rachel Armiger as Sophia Crane. Reed Delisle as Feldman. Just Feldman, as he's referred to in the movie. And the most important one, Seth Adam Kalik as Gavin York. Now we need to talk about a legend. So this is a creepypasta / urban legend more than anything else. The Blink Man legend. The Ilchester Tunnel, located in the historic town of Ellicott City, Maryland. The old B&O Railroad Tunnel. And that's where the urban legend is attached to it. Legend has it that an old homeless blind man was hit and killed by an oncoming train in the early 1900s, and now a spirit haunts said tunnel. Supposedly, if you stand on the tracks at 11 p.m. and stare into the tunnel for an entire hour without blinking, the Blink Man, as he's known, will appear. And after that, every time you blink, after he first appears to you, his ghost will get closer and closer until his eyelashes brush against your face. The butterfly kisses. The constant flickering of his eyelashes on his skin are said to send you into madness, driving you to rip out your own eyes in a fit of blind rage. Which is basically the legend, as it were.
Sleep well, kids.
Yeah. To me, it's a bit silly. As the legend goes, it's a little bit convoluted.
I like the idea of something getting closer and closer, and that's a good way of getting kids to go to sleep. Don't stay up and try and look for this thing.
Well, the aspect itself, let's talk about the aspect alone as it's shown throughout this movie. The idea of staring at one spot for an hour straight without blinking is actually near impossible. This film will actually delve into the difficulty, which makes it even a sillier urban legend because of the difficulty involved of even evoking it. Normally an urban legend is just like, go here, say 3 words, spin around in the spot, and then you're dead. You know? Say Candyman 3 times in the mirror, turn the lights off.
That's simple, an hour.
An hour of straight blinking. We'll see that in this movie, you know? But this legend is the basis for a documentary that Sophia Crane and her school partner, friend Feldman, are making. That's one aspect of the story.
Yeah.
These tapes that these guys made, these 2 made, is what Gavin York finds. So let's break this down as best as I possibly can. It is not a traditional found footage horror. No. It's a found footage movie within a found footage movie wrapped up in a documentary. Telling several stories at once, and the end result could have been a complete mess, but it's not. So we have Gavin York, who basically has found these tapes, and he thinks he's found the next Blair Witch Project. He thinks he's found something really clever, and his plan is to take these tapes and make it into a movie, create the same kind of buzz around, you know, with viral PR and aspects like that. But he's so big-headed about it, he's now invited a documentary crew to film him doing this aspect for back behind the scenes. So there we have it. We have the documentary crew that are filming Gavin. And then you've got Gavin's thing going on, and the tapes themselves. That's what's fascinating. Really, really is. And it's all based around Gavin more than anything else. He's a former film student who hasn't... Well, he's not become exactly the world-renowned director he might have hoped to be. Let's talk about Seth Adam Kalik here. He's brilliant. Honestly, he is amazing in this movie. The quick realisation that we have someone here who dreams of being this, but is so far from it.
He needs to pay his dues, and I think he's hoping this film's going to like just skyrocket him to the top.
And somebody put, he doesn't have the talent, it would seem, as well, because one of the biggest things that's calling in this movie is ethics. The ethics of what he's doing. You want to make a movie, but this isn't even your work. You don't know these people. Who are these people? And so on. But he's convinced it's real, and that's how he's trying to sell it. The question you'll constantly have in your head, though, is does he actually think it's real? Or is he just trying to market himself that way? It's one of the many questions this movie asks. That's why he's got a documentary crew with him. There are times when he'll just be sitting there and he'll awkwardly be talking about money problems and stuff like that. There's a great point where he's trying to get the documentary crew to almost invest money in him as well. The horrible bit where he's asking the sound guys to do it pro bono.
Yep.
And he's basically trying to do all these things to make sure you're very aware that he is a struggling artist. He does wedding videos. And we do see the odd bit where he has issues with his wife and his kid.
Yeah.
They become very distant to him. And he's roused with his wife on stage and stuff like that. It's aspects that I wouldn't necessarily endear you to him, but make him feel real.
And the fact that they film everything, so like the honesty of it can be like sort of praised a little bit on his part, because there's some awkward bits where you're like,
And they really tie that up nicely as well, as later on near the end of the film you'll see the documentary crew actually talking themselves about whether or not they're betraying ethics by filming certain aspects, and then particularly at the end of the movie discussing how they're to blame partially for this by pushing Gavin to do this and stuff we don't see on camera. You're like, yeah, God, I wonder how much they pushed him or encouraged him. And like, yeah, Gavin, we're really on board with this. This is going to be great, when it really isn't that good.
That's a question that probably gets asked a lot by like film documentaries, because the more the culture now is film everything and then put everything out. I mean, there's some people have probably been bamboozled into having more of their stuff out than they originally agreed to, I reckon. Put pressure on them.
Well, you often see that with viral videos. You're like, why did you put that up? I mean, let's use a great example here. This is going to be a bit of a silly one, not related to me at all. There's a viral video where two young girls are in front of the thing, dancing or whatever, and their mother opens the door and says in a really weird accent, strong Scottish accent, like, who did a shit in the toilet? It was one of you. Remember, you know that one?
Yeah, I remember that one.
Why would you upload that to the internet? Like, those are the, you know what I mean? Like, see what I mean? Like,
yeah, and
if
like,
it wasn't encouragement from someone else.
Yeah, and there's like a video I saw the other day of like people that obviously been poked fun of at X Factor and stuff like that, and like they will clearly pick on this girl, quite a big overweight girl, homemade dress, couldn't sing, and obviously like just the exposure of people and stuff. The people that film that, do they ever feel bad about that?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it does call into question ethics of, just because we can film it, does it mean we have to put it out?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely. And it's a big thing. And this movie deals with the ethics as well as poking fun at the genre it's purposely looking at, while being pretty respectful to, I think. So apparently Gavin, his in-laws moved to a new house and came across a box of tapes hidden in a very basement. Now, already you quickly see the ethics of the problem is Gavin brings the crew back with him to show where he found them, and then resets it up. Resets up him discovering them almost to a certain degree, and you're like, okay, right, so there we go. But these are black and white footage shot by two film students years before, and they were apparently making a documentary about the Blink man for their school, that aspect. This is Gavin now going, well, look, I'm going to take this mess of footage, compile it, turn it into a feature film, and you guys are going to document that process. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what we got, the two films. On the one hand, a film about the urban legend, and in one film, the aspect of Gavin. And it's the failure of both, which is really intriguing, I think. Two different sets of people, both obsessed with the Blink man and trying to get a story out of it. All while dealing with the real life difficulties of actually making a movie. And that side of the story comes out with Gavin's things. We said about the ethics, using someone else's works, and then really interesting, the lack of interest in found footage horror and the struggle he gets with funding on this. And this is done brilliantly, where it's kind of like, oh, no one cares about found footage anymore. This is already passé at 2018. More than gone. We've had more than an influx of crap found footage and all that. And we do callbacks to the Blair Witch. We even get probably the most humiliating scene in it, where he's on a radio show and he's basically humiliated by having the director or creator of Blair Witch Project call in to run him down. And what I hate about that scene is where you really feel sorry for Gavin, is you see his spirit break almost to a degree, because he's someone he respected and thought would have his back.
Exactly.
It's just running him down. But I also see this as the Blair Witch guy trying to protect his own property. What do you mean? You're just copying us off and stuff like that. And it's like, all right, you did do a groundbreaking movie in 1999, but let's not forget Book of Shadows and that aspect and stuff like that. That's incredible. He tries to get funding from a paranormal group and gets humiliated by them, which is hilarious, because this spiritualist paranormal group are like, oh no, we can't investigate that, we need more real and stuff like that. It's like the shit you probably look into. This is suddenly a problem, you know? Yeah, so one of the more things that obviously looked in straight away are the people involved, the Feldman and stuff like that. And it turns out they just don't exist. Not that they've disappeared or died or anyone's keeping it a secret. These people just don't exist, which obviously raises the question, well, they probably didn't use their real names then at all. It's not related to that, in fact, and it could. And this movie goes out of its way to constantly show you how it can be faked. How it could be faked. That does come apart a little bit when he does actually meet an author who wrote some spooky stuff, wrote some spooky stories, investigation things. But they meet him. Gavin goes to meet him, and the guy barely remembers. He remembers the people, but he doesn't have any more detail. And what it is Gavin is trying to wheedle information out of him, trying to make it more interesting. The guys look like, yeah, I met him. Yeah, it's fine. And that's basically it.
And Gavin's like, gets frustrated. He's like, we've not got emails from them. He's like, I won't keep emails from
like years before.
Ago. Like, I don't keep things like that. And he's like, well, what do you mean you've not got kept emails?
Yeah, he's quite rude to him.
He really offends him, and that comes across. You're like, there's desperation a little bit. Like, I'd hope for some banging interview of he really leads me down a path and expands on it a bit, but he just pretty much hits a brick wall.
Yeah, and he's constantly showing how things are going to be faked. Like he's shown, when he's shown footage to others, there's a part where Feldman, after having done the Blinkman test and stuff like that, using the camera. So what they did, those two, is they decided to use a camera and as like a blink effect. So they set a camera up in the tunnel, and then it wouldn't blink for 1 hour later. And that apparently worked as Blinkman begins to approach him. And you get lots of background shots where it's like, oh look, in the corner up there and stuff like that. It's all very clever and spooky stuff. It does work on our perspective. Like, that's a bit creepy. But Gavin is conscious, well, that could easily be faked. And people point out to him, why when it's always these things like Bigfoot, it's blurry footage, or it's way in the distance and all that. And then there's one where apparently Feldman was doing Blinkman tests, and you actually get the Blinkman getting closer and closer. But it's pointed out again that every time Blinkman gets closer, Feldman walks across the camera. It's all easily fake, and that's a real problem for him. But every so often, what I love is it will drop in something that makes you chill. And a good example of that is when they're doing the sound, and they pick up something in the sound file that's weird, and there's all these little things where it just sends a nice little chill down you. Where you're like, is it real?
And my mum was why I say when it got closer, like say when it did get closer and stuff like that, you're like, just too much of a random place. Like if you're trying to show something closer, I think you'd have it a bit more prominent. But this, like the Blinkman, is just somewhere really random but getting closer. And I feel like if you want, because it's really hard to see. Like we had to go back and. Because you've seen it a few times, so when we watched it together, you're like, did you see that? I was like,
like the roof part,
And I think, like, if you want to make an impact on people, across a whole range of people, you'd have it a bit more obvious. So hidden, but a bit more obvious, where that one wasn't. So, like, it did kind of think, okay, I'm more leaning towards it's real.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that at the end, of course, what you actually think more than anything else. But yeah, humiliation after humiliation, it's just something he's not able to handle. And I mean, bear in mind, this is a lot of character work. So it does kind of, someone's like said, the horror takes a bit of a back seat to it for sometimes. But I feel like this is something that's designed to build up towards something at the end. And you kind of, once you're aware of that, you're like, okay, well, this is obviously going somewhere. And our frights or scares or things that make... I don't think this film's a scary film. I think this film's an uncomfortable film. Particularly how you might want to analyse the ending more than anything else. The overriding question is Blinkman real? And Butterfly Kisses, to me, goes out a long way to saying no. Like, it goes out of its way to go, no, it's not real. I think, personally. Now, we'll get... At the end, I want you to offer your thoughts on it, but I want to explain what I believe that. And that's the thing. It's so much so that you almost forget you're watching a horror movie. And it's not just a documentary on indie filmmaking and the pitfalls that exist and the problems you'd run into, whether it be funding or getting the respect you needed if you've never done anything before and all this aspects and stuff like that. What you could argue was Gavin probably should have stopped shooting for the stars and just put it out there. Just put it out there. And the fact that it's gutsy enough to sort of take some swings at the genre itself, it's refreshing. And I don't mean look how stupid found footage is, because that wouldn't work, because that annoys the piss out of me. Found footage is stupid while we then do the exact thing we're saying is stupid is not clever. It's more legit complaints that many, like we've said as well, whether it be, they talk like when they're talking about how this footage, like we said about blurriness, and they're like, oh, why is it always shaky? Why is it always this and that and all that? And it's like, that is legitimately the question you're asking yourself. Found footage doesn't feel like it is.
No,
that's a major aspect, you know? And it's a fantastic cast as much as anything else. The switching between styles, I do like how the two films have been put together. So we'll often cut without really understanding why. It's not so much an interruption, it just feels seamless. Like this was important, we're now going to move on. Because normally we'd see a bit of footage and then we'd pan out as to what Seth's doing at that specific, Gavin, should I say, Seth's the actor, Gavin, doing at that time. It's really well put together. And it does go where you want it to go. You're like, here we have all these stories. How is this going to converge? How is this going to converge? And I will say, if you're looking for a jump scare-a-thon, Blinkman jumping and popping into view and all that, it's not going to happen. You will get some, but, you know, how you interpret that is up to you. He's the bogeyman in the background. That's what it is. He's the thing at the corner of your eye. The little floater going past. Did I see that? He's the feeling you get in the back of your neck. That's what I mean. Shadow here and there. A longer shadow.
That's the whole point. And I feel like this urban legend is a bit creepier than most. Like the whole driving you to insanity. That's a bit more than just someone appearing in the bathroom and killing you. I think it's a little more... I think it's worse than that, actually. Like I said, the whole fact that this thing will drive you mad, and like it does show through like the obsession, not just the obsession of the people doing the video, but also like Gavin. So like the obsession of it and the madness part of it, I think it's really well kind of portrayed, because you get like little snippets of further and further along the student film, and like how it's taking its toll and stuff like that is, I think it's really well done.
Well, let's tie up both then. It is going to be spoilers, of course. It's a review about the finance. So Sophia and Feldman, their story's conversion this, where Sophia becomes convinced Feldman is actually faking it herself and starts to distance herself from him. He becomes obsessed with it, starts to use his camera, and eventually dies apparently at the hand of the Blinkman. It's one of your jump scares inside his house. Sophia, being driven to madness and scared and frightened, apparently cuts her own eyelids off to stay awake, not be able to blink and stuff like that. This is Gavin's side of the story, goes like this. In what is a generally shocking moment, desperation to fund the film himself, he steals from his own son's bank account. Savings for his son's bank account. His wife leaves and he breaks down in tears. That's where the documentary crew kind of draw a line, and we actually come back months later after these events have occurred. So he breaks down and all that. It's too much that his wife's left him with the kid and all that. And he says to the documentary, like, they put the camera down and you see like the leader of the documentary guy, like, what's wrong? Like, and he's like, he says, like, I took all the money from my son's savings. Crazy, like, wow. It's really like, whoa, that's horrible. It's really, really horrible. Months later, the documentary guys are putting things together, and they get a package sent from Gavin to them. And they're talking about ethics and all that. And they end up going and finding out that Gavin decided to run the blink test himself with the camera and trace them to a hotel where they basically find him dead in the bathtub. And on the footage, apparently, you know, you see Blinkman and stuff like that. Now, I think he faked it. I think Gavin, driven mad by his obsession more than anything else, and depressed because he'd lost his wife and his life and all that, and pure depression, decided he was going to convince people by doing it to himself. And that the Blinkman you see on camera is just him in a costume. Just like it was with Feldman and stuff like that.
No, I like to think it's real.
Yeah, why? Considering the film goes so out of its way to tell you it's not really, even though you've got those creepy elements, that there might be some truth to something sinister going on, you know? It's difficult, right? Because it's a film that tries so hard to be like, it's not real, but it might be.
Yeah, I feel like the young guy didn't have as much in it to lose as like the Gavin. And the fact that he went mad with it, and I thought it was real. With
Feldman, I mean, they make a point of saying he's failing in his film class. Like, do you know what I mean? And and then she finds his diary where he's got artwork and designs of all the things they've seen and stuff like that. It really goes out of his way. With Gavin, I'm convinced. I know only one person knows what the score is, or what they wanted from this. And for me, I almost enjoy and revel in the idea that Gavin, driven through madness, through depression and all that, decided to be like, fuck you what, I'll show you. And committed suicide, but set her up in this elaborate way with the cameras and all these things. And they'd be like, well, in my death, I'll be able to prove that I was right.
I think it's testament to the film that we've both come away with different opinions.
People, I completely understand. People might hear that and think, well, it doesn't just sound confused if you can't quite make up your mind. No, it really is very much... It leaves so many questions open, but in a satisfying way. You're not at the end going, oh... If you want, at the end, to be given a definitive... The Blinkman was... If they had given me a definitive, the Blinkman thing is real, I'd have probably been disappointed. Likewise, had it been like, is it fake? I'd have been a bit like, oh, okay.
But sometimes that's enjoyable. So, like American Psycho, you can watch that and go, "Is it real? Is it all in his head?" And you can watch it again and try and see if you make it even clearer. But when you can't, you still enjoy the film. Like this, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, you can fake it on cameras, but 2 people have committed suicide. And the fact it was so shady around it, the whole thing around it was mysterious.
But people that didn't exist, apparently. We go back to that again, don't we?
Yeah.
And all these aspects, we're like, okay, did they just have different names for the film thing? Were they never at that school? Were they with this and that and all that, you know? There's all these different aspects where you're like, is it a big town cover-up? And they're just trying to keep people away from the Blink thing and all that. I never got that. I don't know about you. I never got that aspect at all. But the end result is, I think it's so incredibly enjoyable and so incredibly dark and foreboding. You have this feeling of shadows over you all the way through out. I'm not suggesting you're going to sit there and come away terrified. I would, though, seriously suggest watch this on your own in a dark room, and you will get creeped out. You will come away uncomfortable. You will come away unhappy, but you'll hopefully come away as satisfied as I was the first time I saw it. I'm still satisfied on multiple viewings.
Yep, I really appreciated watching it, because that's that whole whole document. Because documentaries are real. Like, you watch documentaries, and the further the video goes, you just, yeah. And like I said before, the idea of something driving you mad. Yeah. Not great.
It is an excellent horror movie, an excellent modern horror movie. Go check it out. Take our word for it, and let us know when you do watch it. Let us know what you think in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com, as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Tumblr. Go to Patreon to help us out over there. That's patreon.com/gbhbl, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favour, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?